What's going on, guys, and welcome back to another exciting episode of A Pretty Lie Instead of an Ugly Truth. And today we have a pretty thought-provoking topic to explore on this channel. The subject that I'm going to be covering today is none other than Nick Cannon's anti-Semitic allegations and his immediate firing from Viacom. Now, for the people at home who might not be aware of what transpired, allow me to fill you in. Nick Cannon recently went on his podcast, Cannon's Class, with Professor Griff, an American rapper, spoken word artist, and a member of Public Enemy. During the segment, Professor Griff tells Nick Cannon the story as to how his career was completely destroyed due to the controversy he had with the Jewish community. As the segment progressed, Cannon and Griff explored ancient history and a few other topics that have been quickly deemed by the media and the Jewish community as anti-Semitic. Now, before I give my personal opinion as to what I believe, it would be remiss of me not to play Nick Cannon's video. That way, everyone at home can see for yourself as to what Nick Cannon said. So first I'll play the video with no interruptions, then I'll briefly interject with a thought or two, and then I'll play the video one last time in order to do a fact check. Sound like a plan? Let's commence.
You had so much information and was so fearless in your message, and through Public Enemy, I felt like you were the one that had the most substance and weight in speaking unapologetically, because Chuck had to do it. He was the MC. He couldn't be so out there in his message, and he had to make it fly. Yeah, okay, he had to be an entertainer. But you were like, I'm just giving it to you raw and uncut. And if you could contextualize it and kind of, because I don't know the entirety of it all, but from my understanding, there was some information that you put out there specifically about the Jewish community that, again, where you were asked to apologize or the entire group was asked to distance themselves from you. And that was kind of the first, that as I saw, the divide of Public Enemy, to where they had to go on and continue to be an entertainment group. And you stuck to your guns and said, I'm Griff. I'm Professor Griff. I will always be the Minister of Information, and I'm not going to apologize. So I'll step away and be myself and allow you guys to go on. Please expound on that and just enlighten us.
Well, let's break it down, and let's break it down in small bits where people can actually get it. Like a lot of people that are coming into consciousness, where they are right now. I sat at the elders of the Dr. Benz and the John Henry Clarks and the Professor Jeffries, Professor Smalls, Shashi McIntyre, and a few other people I could mention. Now, I'm there, physically there, not YouTubing it.
There was no YouTube back then.
You had to physically go there, write the notes, study.
Maybe get a VHS tape or something like that.
And if you had 5 of them in your, you was making a whole lot of noise on the train. I'm saying. All right, so to my understanding, now, I want to thank Khalid El Hakim from the Black History 101 Mobile Museum. He had set up a talk with a rabbi. This is recently. So, and I'm in front of a room full of Jewish people. And I'm asking basic questions, and maybe you can help me out. So let's look up the word anti-Semitic. Who are the Semitic people? And then we're going to get to the Public Enemy thing. So I looked up who is the Semitic people, and there's a list of Semitic people, and anyone can do this right now. You can look up who are the Semitic people, what are the Semitic languages. Has absolutely nothing to do with any white people. Not at all. So in order for me to be anti-Semitic, I'd have to be anti-black man, anti-black woman, anti-black people, anti-Africa, anti-all of the people.
Because the Semitic people
are black people. So
y'all get that clarity. We're going to say that again.
Now,
the Semitic people are black people.
So I cannot be anti-Semitic. Now, what do they really use the phrase anti-Semitic to do? That's the thing.
To divide us.
Exactly. So they put this title on you, anti-Semitic, and then they neutralize you, separated me from the group, say he's a Jew hater, he hate white people, he hate gay people, he hate all white people with freckles and red hair, whatever. And they put that on me, which I never said these things. You understand what I'm saying? I just ran down the history given to me by my elders. And anybody could read this for themselves. So it ain't a Professor Griff hating people thing. Now, closer to what happened with the Public Enemy thing, The brother by the name of James Baum, one of the X1Ws in the group,
Right.
gave me some information because he was in touch with the research department of the Nation of Islam in Boston.
Right.
Got the information, and we talk about the secret relationship between blacks and Jews.
Right.
It was a manual. It wasn't even a book then.
Right. Wow.
I got it. I went to Kinko's so I can get me a copy.
Right.
The brother recognized me. Oh, you that dude from Public Enemy, man.
Right.
For real. I said, yeah, bro, I got to get to this thing because I was the road manager, so I was responsible for everything.
Right.
I gave it to him. The brother gave me a copy, but he made himself a copy also.
Yeah.
So that's a violation, but cool, bro. Whoever
he
you are.
He wanted some information.
He wanted some
He
information.
was hungry. He was thirsty.
Exactly. Okay. When I seen the brother again, dude gave me a box of them. And I gave James back his. So I read it. So now the spokespeople for the group, me and Chuck, we did all the interviews.
Right.
We sat down. We went to DC. We were doing the interview that day, and it wasn't even my interview.
Right.
Chuck's interview, he didn't want to do it.
Right.
So I sat down with him. Now, mind you, I'm the Minister of Information.
Right.
I got 2 suitcases now.
Right.
I used to carry with 2 suitcases full of books.
Right. Right.
And so I laid them all out on the table. So when I went into the interview, I was ready.
Right.
First question he asked is,
Just like this, how we just got to lay it
exactly,
out.
exactly. Who controls the music industry? Well, what more am I supposed to say? You understand? I laid out the names, the people, the organizations they belong to. I laid it out. Now, mind you, this is not coming from Professor Griffith. I wasn't hating nobody that day.
And was it in that statement? Was it just like was it white people, Jewish people, white supremacy? Like was it more just like you just kind of just you weren't saying a hateful statement. You were just saying this is who controls it.
I laid out the names.
Right. Oh, so you specifically
you
said
yes.
people's names.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
People's names.
At that time, because this was what, 80, 89, 90?
Yeah, about 80, 89, yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
And you just said people's names. And
I laid it out, and I
Right.
showed them the books.
Right.
And I looked it up and showed it to him. This paragraph says this. These people control film industry, TV,
Right.
music industry.
And as we know right now,
these are the players.
when we talk about media, there's 6 major corporations that control
Exactly.
all of media.
Exactly.
This is beyond the music industry. And this is you were laying that construct down back then and naming names, calling them to the
Exactly.
table. But
Right.
even as we sit right here today, there's 6 major corporations that control everything that is delivered to you as we speak.
Exactly. So the 6 people can sit in this room and decide everything that we experience as far as entertainment. We watching the movies, reading the magazines. 6 people.
Right.
I laid that out. It wasn't a Jewish conversation.
Right.
It was about the music industry. The first 20 minutes of the conversation, we was laughing, joking, dapping each other up,
Right.
talking.
Right.
His girlfriend walked in. We were talking about David Mills now, who
Right.
dropped dead on a movie set.
Right.
His girlfriend walks in, and his girlfriend's white and Jewish. So when she came and sat down, the complexion of the conversation changed. It became more, and I'm like, you
Right.
see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
A couple of times he even pressed the pause button on the cassette.
Yeah,
recorder.
that privilege starts speaking and
Right. So now he had to change his tone because now the white Jewish girlfriend is sitting next to him.
Right.
And she's getting offended
Right.
by me calling out the Cohens and the Moskowitz and the blacks and the
Right.
and I'm like, okay, but still no hatred involved. I'm just laying the history
Yeah,
out.
we're just speaking facts.
When I finished the interview, he admitted and said to himself, you know something, this is the kind of stuff that can get you in a lot of trouble. And I'm like, now keep in mind now, I'm in my 20s.
Just like these conversations.
No, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
but fearless is. So, and you just saying what you saying. You speaking facts.
Exactly.
There's no reason to be scared of anything when you're speaking the truth.
So I left that interview with what you just said, with that.
Right.
And he faxed it to the Village Voice in New York.
Right.
Front page blew up. It went out, and it's like Professor Griff, anti-Semitic, blah 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 blah, whatever. And when I first told Chuck, he said, "So what? You told the truth. The truth is the truth."
Right.
Everybody's gung ho. Yeah,
Yeah.
Griff dapping me
Just
up.
what we saying right here.
hoisting me up on their shoulders.
Yeah.
A week or two later, I'm the boogeyman. I'm the bad man. I'm the this, that, and the other.
Griff, we got to separate ourselves.
Exactly. And I didn't understand it from someone. Now, this is the painful part. From someone I grew up with, man, since I was 4 or 5 years old.
Right.
How do you do that?
Right.
How do you sit in a room and have one of your friends tell you who you fought with, who you ate with, broke bread with?
Right.
But now I'm the bad man.
Yeah.
Now I'm hated now because I told the truth.
Right.
How do you walk around with that in your chest, Nick? How do you do that?
Yeah.
How do you walk around with now, but because I'm the bad guy in the group, I messed it up for everyone, so to speak. I'm like, whoa.
Right.
This is not what we discussed in my mom's basement, in Miss Boxley's basement in the garage.
Right.
At 510 South Franklin. This is not what we discussed. We was going to get in, shake it up, and we out. And so now I'm here where we didn't want to shake it up that bad. I'm like, come on, bruh.
Right.
Oh, so
and it was just a simple conversation.
It was a simple conversation like we're having right now, bro.
And then, you know what? And because this is one of the reasons why I feel honored to speak with you, but I feel like it's so prevalent and so on time, is because what we're dealing with the Honorable Minister Farrakhan being silenced on Facebook and other platforms.
Right. Neutralized.
Neutralized.
Right.
Which COINTELPRO is still active to this
Exactly.
day. And COINTELPRO, for the young people that don't know, the counterintelligence program. And when you say counter, it's like because we have so much intelligence and information, they want to counter that by destroying us, by neutralizing us, by silencing us. So what we're speaking of today, because they attempted to silence Minister Farrakhan right now, which is COINTELPRO actions and activations, and they did the exact same thing to you. And this is just a question that I have, and even coming from the aspect of if the true children of Israel, if we're speaking of the Jewish community, if we're speaking of the Abrahamic faiths that Islam comes from, that Judaism comes from, that Christianity comes from, all comes from Abraham. And we are all speaking of brotherhood and unity. Why is this division? Why is it such a problem? Why is there so much fear, specifically in the black community, in the Jewish community? And I'm kind of, this is a leading question, which I want to get to, but why is it such a problem to speak the truth?
I think it's a problem it became a problem for us because of the propaganda machine. But it's more of a problem for them.
Right.
Because they've taken our birthright.
Right. They don't want us to be them.
Not deeper than that. They don't want us to be us. They don't want you wrapping your head. They don't want.
Wow.
Nah, they don't want. Now because you recognize.
Right.
And now they identified you. Oh man, Nick knows.
Right.
Who he is, and then now the flip side of that, you know who they are.
Right. So let's dive into it. Who are they? When we speak of, because this is where it truly is, and when we talk about those the 6 corporations, when we go as deep as the Rothschild, centralized banking, those the 13 families, the bloodlines that control everything, even outside of America. When we talk about the people who, if we were truly the children of Israel, and we're defining who the Jewish people are, because I feel like if we actually can understand that construct, then we can see that there is no hate involved. When we talk about the lies, the deceit, how the fake dollar controls all of this, then maybe we can get to the reason why they wanted to silence you, why they wanted to silence Minister Farrakhan, and they want to throw that we are having hate speech when it's never hate speech, when it's not. You can't be anti-Semitic when we are the Semitic people, when we are the same people that who they want to be. That's our birthright.
That's our birthright.
So if that's truly our birthright, there's no hate involved.
It's not.
How did this message get so misconstrued?
When we came back to claim it. So when you start hearing songs like Michael Jackson, hike me, kite me, and blah, 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 blah.
Right.
Nah, you can't say that.
You can't say that.
When you hear
hate speech.
Puffy talking about getting paid or getting like the Hebrew.
Right.
You understand?
They want to mute the Hebrew.
They want to mute that.
Right.
You understand what I'm
Even
saying?
though we are the true Hebrews.
Exactly. So we can't even tell the truth now.
Right.
Not on record, not on television shows, not on YouTube.
Right. When we talk about who we really are as guys and
Right.
understanding that our melanin is so powerful and it connects us in a way that the reason why they fear black, the reason why they fear is because the lack that they have of it. So then when you see what, Dr. Francis C. Welsing talked about is that fear in that
Just genetic annihilation.
that deficiency of when you have a person that has the lack of pigment, the lack of melanin, that they know that they will be annihilated. So therefore, however they got the power, they have the lack of compassion. That melanin comes with compassion. Melanin comes with soul that we call it soul. We soul brothers and sisters. That's the melanin that connects us. So the people that don't have it are a little, and I'm gonna say this carefully, are a little less, and where the term actually comes from, because I'm bringing it all the way back around to Minister Farrakhan, to where they may not have the compassion or the when they were sent to the mountains of Caucasus, when they didn't have the power of the sun, that the sun then started to deteriorate them. So then they're acting out of fear, they're acting out of low self-esteem, they're acting out of a deficiency. So therefore, the only way that they can act is evil. The only way they have to rob, steal, rape, kill, and
fight or flight,
in order to survive.
Exactly.
So then these people who didn't have what we had, and when I say we, I speak of the melanated people.
Right.
They had to be savages. They had to be barbaric. Because they're in these Nordic mountains. They're in these rough, torrential environments. So they're acting as animals.
Right.
So they're the ones that are actually closer to animals. They're the ones that are actually the true savages. And then they built up such this I don't want to say warrior, but they built up such this conquering barbaric mentality that they're coming out of Europe. They then said, in order for us to survive, we have to take what's not ours. And then they went into the land that actually where we are originated. And instead of trying to make friends, they said, we want what you got. Because there's this mentality of whether it's the Caesars or even that we have to conquer.
Right.
So I say all that to say the context. And when we speak of whether it's Jewish people, white people, Europeans, the Illuminati, they were doing that as survival tactics to stay on this planet.
Right, because
we never had to do that.
Right, because they've learned when they circumnavigated the globe and they ran into these islands and these places, and we were already there to greet them.
Right. With open arms.
Teaching them, but they
were deficient.
They were deficient, so they wanted to get what they thought we had, and we did have it. So the rape took place of the woman. The theft took place of the natural resources.
And then that's when their disease,
exactly.
That's where their mentality, because I'm trying to get to that place of how they were able to get control over the gods. How were they able to get control over their original
once they
people?
learned that, though, and now they raped and impregnated, left and came back, and they saw the child lighter, they said, wow, that's when they learned genetics. Genetic annihilation. So now you have to set up a system of white supremacy to control that.
Right.
So, and that's what operating on a subconscious level. So they fear. So Dr. Francis Cress Welsing says, when you show up, they view a grown, 6 foot tall, 230-pound black man the same as they do a 4-year-old.
Yep.
Because in us is the genetic material to annihilate them.
Ooh, and it's their fear of God.
It's their fear.
It's their fear of God.
Exactly.
And then for everybody, because I'm bringing it back in context again, because just so you know, we keep referencing, the great Dr. Francis Cress Welsing. Get that book, The ISIS Papers. If you haven't, it's essential. And in Griff's book first, get the Warrior's Tapestry. He says that book, as well as so many others, that everything that we're talking about, like it has been kept secrets, but it's not a secret. These books are out there for you to actually read upon, and they're all facts. Nothing. That's where I just wanted to get to. I didn't want to keep creating this boogeyman of they. or the
You have to
Illuminati.
demystify who these people are, of
We got to
course.
get to,
Right.
when we talk about who the original man is,
Right.
is the original melanated man coming from the place that we call Africa.
Okay, so now that Cannon's video is over, allow me to give you my personal opinion. I don't know about you and everyone at home, but I'm fucking confused. What part of Nick Cannon's information was anti-Semitic? And what part of Nick Cannon's statement is false? Did Europeans not murder millions of people? Did Europeans not act like animals in the past? Does the sun not deteriorate less melanated people? Did Europeans not rob, steal, rape, kill in order to survive? Did Europeans not act like savages? I'm sorry, but I thought all of these things happened. Now, before I go in with the facts, let's replay this segment one last time in order to do a fact check.
Let's break it down in small bits where people can actually get it.
Right.
Like a lot of people that are coming into consciousness, where they are right now. I sat at the elders of the Dr. Benz and the John Henry Clarks and the Professor Jeffries, Professor Smalls, Shashi McIntyre, and a few other people I could mention. Now, I'm there, physically there. So I looked up who is the Semitic people. And there's a list of Semitic people, and anyone can do this right now. You can look up who are the Semitic people, what are the Semitic languages.
Right.
Has absolutely nothing to do with any white people. So in order for me to be anti-Semitic, I'd have to be anti-black man, anti-black woman, anti-black people, anti-Africa, anti-all of the people.
Because the Semitic people
Are black people.
are black people.
Pause the tape. Now that makes perfect sense as to why Professor Griff would say that. As you just heard, Professor Griff studied with Dr. Clark and Dr. Ben. And together, these professors actually spent an exorbitant amount of time studying and debunking Jewish myths, as they were both Egyptologists. On December 1996, the Master of Masters, Dr. Yosef Ben Yochanan, a Jewish Egyptologist, professor, and author of over 49 books, explored this very topic years ago in his best-selling books, We the Black Jews, Witness to the White Jewish Race, Myth, Volumes 1 and 2. In his groundbreaking book, Dr. Ben destroys the myth of a white Jewish race and the bigotry that has denied the existence of the African Jewish culture. And in case you're wondering as to who these people are, Master Teacher Dr. John Henry Clark and Master Teacher Dr. Ben were both African American historians, professors, and pioneers in the creation of Pan-Africanism and Africana studies. Dr. Clark was a professor of Black and Puerto Rican studies at Hunter College, where he also served as the founding chairman of the department. In regards to Dr. Ben, he was a professor of Egyptology at Malcolm King College in Harlem. He also taught at Rutgers University, and he was also an instructor at the Israelite Rabbinical Academy at Beth Shalom Hebrew Congregation in Brooklyn. Try saying that 5 times. In addition, both professors, and I have to reiterate this as this is a big deal, both professors also taught African history at the Ivy League Research Institute, Cornell University. And in case you forgot what an Ivy League school is, allow me to rejog your memory. The term Ivy League is typically used beyond the sports context to refer to 8 schools as a group of elite colleges with implications of academic excellence, selectivity in admissions, and social elitism. Its members in alphabetical order are Brown University, Columbia University, Cornell University, Dartmouth College, Harvard University, the University of Pennsylvania, Princeton University, and Yale University. Now, why is this important and what relevance does this have, you might ask? Professor Griff and Nick Cannon are reviewing the work of 2 of the greatest scholars in their respected fields in the entire world. Not only is the knowledge that they are presenting factual, but it's backed by Cornell University itself. To discredit them, you would have to inevitably discredit Cornell, as this is where this information was taught. And in case you still don't grasp just how elite and powerful the school is, allow me to enlighten you. In order to get accepted into Cornell, as a student, you need to have a GPA of 3.9 or above, and have an SAT score of 1550, or an ACT score of 34 or above. And remember, the highest score you can get on the ACT is a 36. So right there, you would have to have a near perfect score. And in case you're wondering what the average ACT score is in the world, it's around 23. And on top of all of that, Cornell is one of the most competitive schools in the world to get into, boasting an admission rate just under 11%. Cornell's admission statistics indicate that Cornell accepts 10 out of every 100 students that apply. That means even if you had the credentials that they were looking for, i.e. the GPA and SAT scores, you still need to somehow stand out enough to get accepted. So now that I explained just how difficult it is for a student to get into Cornell, imagine how hard it would be for a person to actually receive a teaching job there. This article comes from Forbes, and it's appropriately titled, How Does One Become a Professor at Universities Such as Harvard, Stanford, Caltech, and MIT? Begin quote, the people chosen for interviews typically have outstanding publications, you guys just heard that, outstanding publications, well-known and widely regarded papers in top conferences/journals, as well as letters from people who are highly regarded in the field. You heard that again, highly regarded in the field, often not just from the applicant's own school. The focus is on people who have the potential to be or are stars. I have to reiterate that. Who have done something that is viewed as seminal or game-changing. Game-changing. Research that is game-changing. You have to have that criteria before you can even step foot into school. Once invited for an interview, candidates have to give a 1-hour seminar, attend a dinner with several faculty, and have a 30-minute to 1-hour meeting with individual faculty. The best seminars are accessible to a general audience, demonstrate the impactful thing the candidate has done, and show that he or she is an outstanding teacher and communicator. Individual meetings give faculty a chance to explore a candidate's research vision, follow up on details from the talk, understand what kind of colleague a candidate would make, and so on. So as you can see here, before you can even step foot into college again, all of the faculty have to cross-examine your work and see what type of stuff you have taught in the past before you can even get or even entertain the possibility of working at Cornell. So yeah, motherfucker, you're not just gonna walk into Cornell University and work there and teach anything that they deem disrespectful or anti-Semitic if it is not peer-reviewed or well-researched. And both of these scholars actually taught this stuff there at that university. And if that's not bad enough, both men applied to Cornell University when racism was still at an all-time high. So not only did they have to go through all of the hoops and hurdles that I just mentioned a couple of seconds ago, but they also had to prove that they knew what the hell they were talking about to a group of people who were not only super elitist, but they might have been racist at the same time. Simply put, to work at Cornell University, one of the 8 most prestigious schools in the world, you would have to be a genius or a prodigy. So yeah, I'm gonna rock with Nick Cannon and Professor Griff on this one, as the research that they are presenting today comes from 2 of the smartest scholars in the world. And for the people at home who are curious as to what John Henrik Clarke talked about, allow me to play one of his excerpts. This speech, along with so many others, was also given at Cornell University.
We cannot separate folklore from fact. Too many times we swear by folklore, not knowing that it has nothing to do with facts. All right. Who exactly is a Jew? All right. There was no word called Jew in the ancient world. The word Jew did not come out of Africa. It did not come out of Western Asia. It is a European word. There are people of the Hebrew faith all over the world. There are black Hebrews, there are brown Hebrews, there are yellow Hebrews. How is it that a bunch of Europeans called Jews dominate the word Jew to the extent of making you think that the very faith Hebrew is exclusive to them, leaving out all other people? All right. We become prisoners to circumstances in history. Becoming prison to these circumstances in history, we still react to this conquest of the mind. In slavery, we wanted to associate ourselves with the people who had escaped from something. So we read a Jewish escape story called the Exodus. And we believed it. And we didn't examine the story. Because if you examine the story, you will find the story is told to instill faith in a people. And sometimes, if a story is told to instill faith and truth, the illustration used to get the point across need not be true. They copied, these Western Asian people copied Nile Valley folk stories, personified themselves into the story, and sold you your own story, and you bought it.
This information was peer-reviewed, well-researched, and also presented at Cornell University. So I don't know about you, but to debunk this gentleman, you would have to once again debunk Cornell University, as this information was taught there and presented in the curriculum by some of the brightest and smartest people around the world. And for the people at home who don't want to believe what I'm saying and you still want to discredit Dr. Ben and Dr. Clark's work, let's look at another source, shall we? In 2009, Dr. Shlomo Sands, an Israeli professor of history, wrote in his groundbreaking book, The Invention of Jewish People, more or less the exact same thing that Dr. Ben stated, substantiating Dr. Ben's premise. Now let's get back to the story.
Now, what do they really use the phrase anti-Semitic to do? That's the thing.
To divide us.
Exactly.
Right.
So they put this title on you, anti-Semitic, and then they neutralize you,
Right.
separated me from the group,
Right.
say he's a Jew hater, he hate white people, he hate gay people, he hate all white people with freckles and red hair, whatever.
Right.
And they put that on me, which I never said these things.
Right.
You understand what I'm saying? I just ran down the history given to me by my elders. And anybody could read this for themselves.
Right.
So it ain't a Professor Griff hating people thing.
Right.
Pause the tape. That's actually pretty true. Back in 1993, master teacher Tony Martin, who was considered by most to be the world's foremost authority on Marcus Garvey, came under attack when he decided to teach in his classroom at Wellesley College, the university where he had tenured, that Jews played an involvement in the transatlantic slave trade. Almost immediately after teaching this in his classroom, the good professor was approached by every major Jewish outlet you can think of. Not only did they try to silence him, but they also tried to destroy his career in every media outlet that they owned, including the TV and the newspapers. And yes, just like Professor Griff and Nick Cannon, he was labeled with anti-Semitic charges. Run the tape.
Our next speaker, Tony Martin, has taught at Wellesley College, Massachusetts since 1973. He was tenured in 1975 and has been a full professor in Africana Studies since 1979. Prior to that, he taught at the University of Michigan Flint and the Cipriani Labor College in Trinidad and St. Mary's College in Trinidad. He has been a visiting professor at the University of Minnesota, Brandeis University, Brown University, and the Colorado College. He has also spent a year as an honorary research fellow at the University of the West Indies, Trinidad. Professor Martin has written or compiled and edited 11 books. In 1965, he qualified as a barrister at law at the Honourable Society of Gray's Inn, London. He also holds a Bachelor of Science Honours degree in Economics at the University of Hull in England and a Master's and PhD degrees in History at the Michigan State University. His articles and reviews have appeared in the Journal of Negro History, American Historical Review, African Studies Review, Washington Post Book World, Journal of Caribbean History, I'll be done in a minute here, hang on. Journal of American History, Black Books Bulletin, Science and Society, the Jamaica Journal, to name a few, and he has contributed to several anthologies and encyclopedia. Ladies and gentlemen, it gives me great pleasure to introduce Dr. Tony Martin.
The first thing I should do by way of introduction is just to basically summarize precisely what my controversy was. I know it's familiar to many people here, but I'm sure not to everybody in this audience. As was mentioned a minute ago in the introduction by Greg Raven, I teach at Wellesley College in Massachusetts. For many years, I've taught a survey course in African American history. And in 1993, I introduced into my course a book which is on sale at the back, a book which then was fairly new, a book which I myself had only just recently become introduced to. That is a book published by the Historical Research Department of the Nation of Islam. The book is entitled The Secret Relationship Between Blacks and Jews. And what that book did, relying primarily on sources written by Jews, Jewish sources of a variety of different types, that book tried to sort of synthesize the existing information on Jewish involvement in the slave trade, the bringing of Africans as slaves from Africa to the so-called New World. There wasn't that much in the book that was new, in the sense that all the information practically was secondary information which had been already published, although hidden away to a large extent in very esoteric Jewish journals, which the average Jew, I discovered later, had no idea about. Nevertheless, it wasn't new information. It was new to many people, including myself. And I found it very interesting that I had taught African American history for many years, but had only been dimly aware of the role of Jews in that slave trade. What I discovered was that the Jewish role in that slave trade had been very cleverly camouflaged for many, many years. Where Jews were involved, usually they tended not to be identified as Jews, whereas, where Christians were involved, where Muslims were involved, there was ready identification, of such persons by their ethnicity, by their religious affiliation, and so on. In the case of Jews, they would be called other things, Portuguese, Spanish, Brazilian, whatever. But, that crucial identification tended to be obscured. So, as a good professor, I think I'm a good professor, and I'm always on the lookout for new information to enrich my classes. So I was very fascinated by this new information and decided to add a few readings from this book in my class. And that's when, as the saying goes, all hell broke loose. The first and major tactic that I discovered in their attack on me was the reliance on lies. That's straight up lies. There's no other way to describe it, just telling lies. Now, shortly after all of this started, 4 of the major Jewish organizations issued a joint press release attacking me. The ADL, the American Jewish Committee, the American Jewish Congress, and the Jewish Community Relations Council of Boston or Greater Boston or something like that. They themselves said afterwards that this was somewhat unprecedented, that 4 of these major Jewish organizations should have combined their efforts to attack one little obscure professor in a small school. They themselves admitted that this was somewhat unprecedented. Now this proclamation told the world that I was refusing to let my students discuss this information. First of all, it presented me as providing wrong information, blatantly false information, as another Jewish person described it to my classroom. And it said that I was refusing, here was I in a classroom apparently ramming this stuff down my students' throats and forbidding any discussion, which was absolutely, hideously untrue. It said that I had a history of all kinds of problems with my school, and that my colleagues had been complaining about me for many years. Up to now, I have no inkling of what these complaints could possibly be. I know of no such incidents, certainly not before this time. One of the interesting lies that came out around this time was the rabbi, the campus rabbi. She came to my office. It's a she, actually. She came to my office, complaining about my teaching this information. So I told her, well, look, if you think this information is false, why don't you come to my class? I will invite you to my classroom, and you can come to my class. I'm going to allow you to stand up in front of my class and explain to them what's wrong about this information, and then we can have a debate in front of the class. And she agreed. But of course, she quickly changed her mind. And not only did she change her mind, but then she put it out that I had refused to discuss the material with her. Point number 2 was a very interesting proclivity towards attempting to damage one's professional credibility. In 1994, I think it was, at the height of this, and up to now I'm kind of surprised at this, but at the height of all the hysteria around this question, the Washington Post book world invited me to review 4 new books, for the issue on Sunday, which I did. They gave me a lot of space. It was the longest book review in that issue. And predictably, in the very next week's issue, there were 2 or 3 outraged letters from Jewish individuals asking the Washington Post book world, if they weren't aware who this person was that they had allowed to grace their pages. This was the great anti-Semite Tony Martin. Then don't you know who this is? How can you let him write in this kind of a prestigious journal? And this guy, Wieseltier, went a step further. The title of my book is The Jewish Onslaught, and the subtitle is Dispatches from the Wellesley Battlefront. Now, I spell dispatches D-E-S. Most Americans spell it D-I-S. I grew up in a British tradition, in a British colony, and up to this day I spell honor H-O-N-O-U-R. Most of you do not. So the E is a British spelling. And this idiot obviously didn't realize that there were alternative spellings of the word dispatches. And again, so anxious are they to try to discredit people who they disagree with. This guy actually, told the Washington Post book world in his letter that I was so ignorant and stupid I couldn't even spell the word dispatches. Look how stupid I was. And this was a stupid kind of a person that they were allowing to publish in their journal. Luckily for me, the editor of the Washington Post book world was one of those rare persons who was apparently not too cowed by the Jewish onslaught. And she wrote a very nice letter back, a rejoinder, telling Wieseltier that she had checked 2 dictionaries, and in both of them, she saw dispatches spelled with an E, as one of the optional spellings of the word. Then there was Mary Lefkowitz, the great Mary Lefkowitz, one of my colleagues at Wellesley College, who wrote in a little literary magazine that I'd never seen before. But she wrote in this magazine, she actually alleged that I had physically assaulted a white student. Now, I teach in a women's college. So, so here is she playing into, I guess, all these perceptions of this big black rapist or whatever. But she actually alleged that I actually physically pushed down a white student. This would be a young white woman, and the woman fell down. Then she said I bent over her and raged. That was the word she used. I raged. I bent over her and raged. One had this vision of this raging animal, So, of course, I brought a libel suit against her. And one of the things I discovered was that, these folks are very, very well positioned in the court system. So in fact, after having lost, I guess, 2 libel suits, I'm beginning to think that they must have had something to do with fashioning the libel laws in this country. Because in this case, Lefkowitz actually acknowledged that what she said was wrong. And she acknowledged that she had not taken due care in ascertaining the facts. And even those acknowledgments were not enough for me to win the case. I had to prove that she had acted with reckless abandon and all kinds of things. But it was a very interesting learning experience for me, how the libel laws, because especially once they identify you as what they call a public person. The way the libel laws in this country are organized, once you are identified as a public person, people basically have carte blanche. They can say anything about you. It can be true, it can be false. They don't have to do their research. They can say anything they want, almost. It's almost that bad. So these are some of the efforts to discredit me. Of course, I don't think that they succeeded, but again, this was the very persistent effort to sort of tarnish your image.
See what I'm talking about? You see it? This ain't nothing new under the sun. Every single person who has come forward and revealed some truth or has tried to tell the truth about what's really going on in our society gets silenced. But I digress. Let's get back to Nick Cannon.
Now, closer to what happened with the public enemy thing, the brother by the name of James Baum, one of the X1Ws in the group, gave me some information because he was in touch with the research department of the Nation of Islam in Boston.
Right.
Got the information, and we talk about the secret relationship between blacks and Jews.
Right.
It was a manual. It wasn't even a book then.
Right. Wow.
I got it. I went to Kinko's so I can get me a copy. Went to D.C. We were doing the interview that day, and it wasn't even my interview.
Right.
Chuck's interview, he didn't want to do it. First question he asked is
just like this, how we just got to lay it out.
Exactly. Who controls the music industry? Well, what more am I supposed to say? You understand? I laid out the names, people, the organizations they belong to. I laid it out. Now, mind you, this is not coming from Professor Griffith. I wasn't hating nobody that day.
And was it in that statement? Was it just like was it white people Jewish people, white supremacy? Like, was it more just like you just kind of you weren't saying a hateful statement. You were just saying this is who controls it.
I laid out the names.
Right. Oh, so you specifically
said
said people's names.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
People's names.
At that time, because what this was, what, 80, 89, 90?
Yeah, about 80, 89, yeah.
Okay.
These people control film industry, TV,
right,
music industry.
And as we know right now,
these are the players.
When we talk about media, there's 6 major corporations that control
Exactly.
all of media.
Exactly.
This is beyond the music industry, and this is, you were laying that construct down back then and naming names, calling them to the
Exactly.
table. But
right.
even as we sit right here today, there's 6 major corporations that control everything that is delivered to you as we speak.
Exactly. So the 6 people can sit in this room and decide everything that we experience as far as entertainment. We watching the movies, reading the magazines. 6 people.
Right.
Pause the tape. That's actually pretty true. In 1985, Charles Silverman, a Jewish-American author, explained in his groundbreaking book, A Certain People, American Jews and Their Lives Today, the control and power that Jews have in Hollywood, all of the places that Jewish people control. Why he chose to divulge this in his book is beyond me, but it is pretty factual, more or less. According to Charles Silverman, Walt Disney, the largest media conglomerate in the world, was formerly chaired by Michael Eisner and is currently chaired by Robert Iger, who are both part of the Jewish community. Disney also has 225 affiliated stations in the US and is the part owner of several European television companies. This includes ABC's cable subsidiaries, the Lifetime channel, and the art and entertainment networks cable companies such as ESPN. In regards to the ABC subsidiaries that I mentioned, ABC Radio Network owns 11 AM and 10 FM stations in major markets such as New York, Washington, and Los Angeles. The Disney Group also owns several daily newspapers, Fairchild Publication, Chilton Publications, and the Diversified Publishing Group. With this type of power and companies under their belt, Disney has the ability to manipulate and control nearly every aspect of what a child is exposed to. Whew, that's really scary. Time Warner, the second of the international media leviathans that own HBO and so many other networks, was once run by Jeff Boukas and is now run by Jason Kilar, who are both part of the Jewish community. Warner Music, the world's largest recording company with 50 associate labels and Warner Brothers Records, was headed by Danny Goldberg. The new CEO is Aaron Bayshek, who are both part of the Jewish community. The former CEO of Warner Bros. Is Barry Meyer. Time Warner's publishing division was run by former editor-in-chief Norman Pearlstein. The current editor-in-chief is Edward Felsenthal, all of which are part of the Jewish community. Now, just like Disney, the publishing arm of Time Warner alone is able to control every aspect of what is read by much of the world's population, as it is the world's largest magazine publisher. And in case you're wondering what magazines Time Warner's own, allow me to fill you in. They oversee Time Magazine, Sports Illustrated, People, and Fortune. Viacom, the corporation in question who fired Nick Cannon for this segment, and the ones who we are examining today, is one of the largest multinational mass media conglomerates in the world. They are run by Sherry Redstone. Now, before I go any further, it would be remiss of me not to examine Sherry Redstone, as Sherry Redstone is the leader of Viacom, and she's ultimately the one who gave the order to fire Nick Cannon. Sherry Ellen Redstone, born April 14th, 1954, is an American media executive with a background in numerous aspects of the entertainment industry and relevant ventures. She currently serves as the chair of Viacom CBS and president of National Amusements. She formerly served as the vice chair of CBS Corporation and Viacom. Through National Amusements, Redstone and her family are the majority owners of CBS, Comedy Central, BET, yeah, they own BET, Showtime Networks, and the film studios Paramount Pictures. Now let's keep digging. Redstone is the daughter of Phyllis Gloria Raphael and Sumner Redstone, and is the sister of Brent Redstone. Her grandfather was Michael Redstone, who was the original founder of National Amusements, the parent company that now owns the majority of the Redstone media empire. Now, why is this important and what relevance does this have, you might ask? Michael Redstone, born Michael Rothstein, was born on April 11th, 1902 through April 4th, 1987. And he was the founder of the Northeast Theater Corporation, which is now National Amusements. Redstone was born in Boston in 1940, and at the behest of his son, Sumner Redstone, he agreed to change their surname from Rothstein to Redstone. Redstone is a literal translation of the German Jewish name Rothstein. Get it? Roth is red, Stein is stone. Get it? The guy clearly didn't want anybody to know of his Jewish origins, so he changed his last name. He changed his last name, and I'm going to reiterate that, to hide his Jewish origin. But why would he want to hide that? What could he be so ashamed of? Oh, could it be this? Oh, so that's why you didn't want anybody to know your connections. The Rothschild family is who they're connected to. So let's take a look at the Rothschild family, shall we? The Rothschild family is a wealthy Jewish family originally from Frankfurt that rose to prominence with Meyer Amschel Rothschild, 1744 to 1812, a court factor to the German Landgraves of Hesse Castle in the Free City of Frankfurt, Holy Roman Empire, who established his banking business in 1760. So as you all can see here, this is one of the most powerful and elitist families in the entire world. They run the banking industry, this group, the Rothschilds. And as we just learned, Roth means red. Remember that? Roth means red, and child is just child. So the Red Childs, aka the Redstones, are part of the Red Childs. They're from the same group, if you're not putting the fucking dots together.
Corporations, when we go as deep as the Rothschilds, centralized banking, those the 13 families, the bloodlines that control everything even outside of America.
Now I'm just gonna come out and say it. This is why Nick Cannon was fired. He was fired because he revealed the true origins of this woman's ancestry. And under no circumstances could this woman allow him to connect her to these people. We know this because her father went out of his way to change his last name. He changed his last name in an attempt to hide their origin. And here Nick Cannon goes, revealing these jewels on YouTube to everybody. This is one of the deciding factors that caused him to get fired. But I digress. Let's get back to Mr. Silverman's book so that way we can examine other companies that run Hollywood. Sony's corporations, former CEOs include Michael Linton and the disgustingly racist Amy Pascal, who was once honored as the most powerful woman in Hollywood. And in case you're wondering why I called Amy Pascal disgustingly racist, take a look. Back in 2014, Sony Pictures co-chairman Amy Pascal apologized for her racially insensitive comments that she made with her producer Scott Rudin about President Obama. All of this came out, of course, in a series of stolen emails that were published online. Begin quote, "Would he like to finance some movies?" responded Rudin when Pascal sought his advice on what she should say to the president at a Hollywood fundraiser. "I doubt it. Should I ask him if he liked Django?" said Pascal, with Rudin replying, 12 years. I'm assuming that he's referring to 12 years as a slave. "Or The Butler, or Think Like a Man," continued Pascal, who is a major donor for the Democratic Party and President Obama. "Right along. I bet he likes Kevin Hart," said Rudin. Pascal then went on to say the context of her emails were insensitive and inappropriate, but not an accurate reflection of who I am. She said this in a statement, adding that, although this was a private communication that was stolen, I accept full responsibility for what I wrote and apologize for everyone who was offended. Now, that's some straight up bullshit. Since when is saying racist comments not a true reflection of who you are? So as you can see here, both of these individuals believe that the President of the United States and black people only like and tailor to these particular movies. And this is supposed to be the most powerful woman in the world, who controls all of the major media outlets. And this is what she thinks about black people. Now, what I find to be particularly crazy and hypocritical, might I add, is that if a black person would dare to say anything like this about Jewish people, his ass would never work in Hollywood again. Yet she can sit here and say this shit about the ex-president of the United States and nothing happened to her. You know what I find to be particularly crazy about this entire segment? It's the fact that none of the people that I mentioned are people of color. Not one CEO, not one director here who's running the company is a black guy or a Latino. Think about it. There's no protection for the Nick Cannons when there's no fair representations, aka black and Latinos, at the top. But I digress. Let's focus on Nick Cannon.
I laid that out. It wasn't a Jewish conversation.
Right.
His girlfriend walked in. We were talking about David Mills now. When she came and sat down, the complexion of the conversation changed. It became more, and I'm like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
A couple of times he even pressed the pause button on the cassette.
Yeah,
recorder.
that privilege starts speaking. And
right. So now he had to change his tone because now the white Jewish girlfriend is sitting next to him.
Right.
And she's getting offended
by
me calling out the Cohens and the Moskowitz and the blacks and the,
Right.
And I'm like, okay, but still no hatred involved. I'm just laying the history out.
Yeah, we're just speaking facts.
When I finished the interview, he admitted and said to himself, you know something, this is the kind of stuff that can get you in a lot of trouble. And I'm like, now keep in mind now, I'm in my 20s.
Just like these conversations.
No, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, but fearless is. So why is it such a problem to speak the truth?
I think it's a problem it became a problem for us because of the propaganda machine. But it's more of a problem for them.
Right.
Because they've taken our birthright.
Right.
Oh, man, Nick knows.
Right.
Who he is, and then now, the flip side of that, you know who they are.
Right. It is then when we talk about the power of melanated people, when we talk about who we really are as guys and understanding that our melanin is so powerful and it connects us in a way that the reason why they fear black, the reason why they fear is because the lack that they have of it. So then when you see what, Dr. Francis C. Welsing talked about is that fear in that
just genetic annihilation,
deficiency of when you have a person that has the lack of pigment, the lack of melanin, that they know that they will be annihilated. So therefore, however they got the power, they have the lack of compassion. That melanin comes with compassion. Melanin comes with soul. That we call it soul. We soul brothers and sisters. That's the melanin that connects us. So the people that don't have it are a little, and I'm gonna say this carefully, are a little less, and where the term actually comes from, because I'm bringing it all the way back around to Minister Farrakhan, to where they may not have the compassion or the when they were sent to the mountains of Caucasus, when they didn't have the power of the sun, that the sun then started to deteriorate them. So then they're acting out of fear, they're acting out of low self-esteem, they're acting out of a deficiency. So therefore, the only way that they can act is evil. The only way they have to rob, steal, rape, kill, and
fight or flight,
in order to survive.
Exactly.
So then these people who didn't have what we had, and when I say we, I speak of the melanated people.
Right.
They had to be savages. They had to be barbaric. Because they're in these Nordic mountains. They're in these rough, torrential environments. So they're acting as animals.
Right.
So they're the ones that are actually closer to animals. They're the ones that are actually the true savages. And then they built up such this I don't want to say warrior, but they built up such this conquering barbaric mentality that they're coming out of Europe. They then said, in order for us to survive, we have to take what's not ours. And then they went into the land that actually where we are originated. And instead of trying to make friends, they said, we want what you got. Because there's this mentality of whether it's the Caesars or even that we have to conquer.
Right.
So I say all that to say the context, and when we speak of whether it's Jewish people, white people, Europeans, the Illuminati, they were doing that as survival tactics to stay on this planet.
Right, because
we never had to do that.
Right, because they've learned when they circumnavigated the globe and they ran into these islands and these places, and we were already there to greet them.
Right. With open arms.
teaching them, but then
But
when
they were deficient.
They were deficient, so they wanted to get what they thought we had, and we did have it. So the rape took place of the woman. The theft took place of the natural resources.
the
Once
original
they
people.
learned that, though, and now they raped and impregnated, left and came back, and they saw the child lighter, they said, wow, that's when they learned
is how we-
genetics. Genetic annihilation. So now you have to set up a system of white supremacy to control that.
Right.
So now we have 13 families here, Illuminati that's manipulating and controlling. Subgroups. Now we got to set up organizations.
From the white nationalists to the white supremacy mentalities to Donald Trump himself wanting to build walls.
Right.
They're trying to keep what they consider purity. It's just been proven. Was National Geographic just put it out by 2050? Every person will be a person of color.
So Dr. Francis Cress Welsing says when you show up, they view a grown, 6 foot tall, 230-pound black man the same as they do a 4-year-old.
Yep.
Because in us is the genetic material to annihilate them.
Ooh. And for everybody, because I'm bringing it back in context again, because just so you know, we keep referencing, the great Dr. Francis Cress Welsing. Get that book, The ISIS Papers, if you.
Pause. First things first. As you all clearly heard, Nick Cannon quoted Francis Cress Welsing. And in case you don't know who master teacher Francis Cress Welsing was, allow me to explain again. Dr. Welsing was a clinical psychologist and author of the ISIS Papers. Now, in Francis Cress Welsing's book, The ISIS Paper, comes Welsing's most famous theory, the melanin theory. The theory originates around the concept that white people are the descendants of albinos. Welsing also states that because of this mutation, they may have been forcibly expelled from Africa, explaining the journey many humans took out from Africa and into the New World. For white people, their journey out of Africa took them into modern Europe. This notion is further developed into addressing white supremacy, as it is easy for pure whiteness to be genetically lost during interracial mixing. White-skinned people developed an aggressive colonial urge to protect this mutation, creating dominating societies over all others, particularly through military force at the cost of any colored societal development. Welsing then goes on to ascribe certain inherent and behavioral differences between blacks who have melanin and white people who are less melanated. Now I know what you may be thinking. How do we know that all of this is true, you might ask? Well, for starters, master teacher and world-renowned geneticist Luigi Luca Cavalli Forzas, the guy who helped create the Human Genome Project, wrote a book entitled The History and Geography of Human Genes. Now, according to master teacher Cavalli, black people were the first people to inhabit the earth, and white skin didn't exist until millions upon millions of years later. This substantiates what Dr. Welsing stated about white people coming from albinism, as 2 white people cannot produce a black person, but 2 black people can produce a white person, aka albinos. Supporters of this theory also find credence in the fact that the majority of the historical records, for example, almost all European countries, shared a deep-seated anti-foreign, anti-black sentiment from their inception. Point in case, the minute Christopher Columbus landed in the New World, the first thing he thought about doing was putting people into slavery. He then went on to murder, rape, and kill millions of people. The same can be said about every other European conquistador and conqueror that stepped foot in the New World. And for the people at home who still don't believe me, here's the story of Hernan Cortez, Christopher Columbus, and Diego Velazquez in 1 minute or less. In 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue and kidnapped the local inhabitants, stole all of their natural resources, viciously raped all of the local women, established the first sex trafficking ring, created a concentration camp where he forced natives to work in gold mines, created the transatlantic slave trade, spread diseases such as smallpox and syphilis, stole all of their gold, and killed more than 3 million Arawak people, wiping them off of the face of this earth. In 1504, Hernan Cortez landed in the Dominican Republic, where he was immediately offered a job by Diego Velazquez to conquer Cuba. From 1511 to 1518, Diego Velazquez and Hernan Cortez murdered all of the inhabitants, raped all of their women, and put the remaining survivors into slavery. In 1518, Diego Velazquez heard rumors about a city of gold in Mexico and ordered a few of his troops to investigate it. When they didn't return, he ordered Cortez and his men to conduct a rescue operation. Cortez had his own plans, however, and a mutiny followed. Cortez went to Mexico on his own volition, betraying Velazquez's orders, as all he wanted was the gold. In February 1519, Cortez landed in Mexico, where his spree of murder and chaos began. He raped all of the Mayan women, burned people alive, shot, stabbed, and hung all of the local inhabitants. On November 8th, 1519, Cortez found the city capital Tenochtitlan, where he murdered all of the inhabitants, raped all of their women, destroyed all of their religious and spiritual deities, forced Christianity upon them, murdered the emperor, spread smallpox, syphilis, gonorrhea, and other diseases upon the locals until they were all completely wiped out. Dr. Battlelore's book, Birth of a White Nation, explores and examines the laws that were created to protect the idea of whiteness in the colonies.
More than 300 years, this law, called the anti-miscegenation law, that prohibited white people from marrying always people of African descent and sometimes various others, depending on the demographics of a region, lasted more than 300 years. So these ideas about white women worked to shape a notion of them as us as embodying white purity, right? Because white men couldn't. They were sexually assaulting, sometimes having perhaps relationships that weren't of an assault nature with some of the African women that they enslaved. So white women's bodies literally became the way in which whiteness was reproduced. So it was largely a control mechanism, making white women exclusive to white men and truly all women available to white men. Right, and so it was to control white women and non-white men.
This is absurd.
Their relationality and their sexual. Well, it persists today.
Sure.
Right?
The white nationalists to the white supremacy mentalities to Donald Trump himself wanting to build walls.
Right.
They're trying to keep their what they consider purity. It's just been proven. Was National Geographic just put it out by 2050? Every person will be a person of color.
Master teacher and civil rights legend Jane Elliott taught and asserted the same thing.
White people are fully aware that within 30 years, they will have lost their numerical majority in the United States of America. They will be a minority group within 30 years. They're scared to death that when minority, they are going to be treated by the majority, which will be people of color, the way white people have treated people of color. They're scared to death. White males are frightened right now. They see the future and they're terribly, terribly intimidated. And they'll go to great lengths. And if you don't believe that, then why do you think? And he said, our so-called president says we're going to have a wall on the southern border of the United States to keep those brown-skinned people out because brown-skinned people reproduce too rapidly.
Now, I know what you may be thinking. Why is this happening to Nick Cannon? Why is his constitutional amendment for freedom of speech being violated? Well, the answer to that question is pretty fucking simple. Whenever you mention anything about the Jewish community, the secrets of the Rothschilds, their economic power, or anything that they don't want to hear, you'll get slapped with the anti-Semitic label. Even if you have proof to substantiate your allegations, you'll get shut the fuck down. Good or bad, right or wrong. Just like Nick Cannon, Janet Jackson, Professor Griff, Tony Martin, and so many other people in the past, as a majority of the media industries, including Hollywood, as we just learned, is run by the Jewish community.